In this video, I'm going to show you how you can build a custom AI chatbot using a combination of InfraNodus, a text network analysis tool, and Dify that allows you to create custom AI workflows and build chatbots which you can then embed into any page or share through a URL. The special thing about this approach is that we will be using the underlying graph insights of InfraNodus via its API. So instead of just building a standard chatbot that would be using knowledge-based retrieval, RAG, retrieval augmented generation, which sometimes produces very generic results, we'll have much more contextual data from InfraNodus here that we will ingest into our AI workflows and generate much more precise results that are sometimes referred to as graph RAG. So we're using the knowledge graph underneath, and this is how we're making the results that the chatbot produces much more precise and much more relevant to the actual context we're working with. And this is especially useful if you want to create a chatbot that will talk to your customer support portal, for example, or any other tool. It becomes much more pertinent to the actual topic that the user is dealing with, and you will see how it produces much better results. So I'm going to show you how you can build all that using a very simple workflow. So let's get into it. First of all, I will show you how Dify works. So Dify is a platform that you can use to create custom AI workflows, and it works in a very simple way. You basically have the Studio tab here where you can create chatbots from scratch. You have knowledge where you can ingest a knowledge base that your chatbots will be using, and you have tools where you can add additional tools. Like in our case, we'll use InfraNodus tools in order to generate better responses. And the first thing that you need to do when you're building a chatbot is to upload your custom knowledge, because you want your chatbot to have a very specific context of something you're working with. So it can be a collection of documents, a link to your support portal, customer reviews, doesn't matter. In order to do that, you go into Dify and then you click on knowledge and then you click create knowledge. And here you can select several files, sync with your Notion, or sync from a website. When you sync from a website, they offer you to use Firecrawl, which I like a lot because it's a really good tool where you can ingest a whole website, scrape it, and then download it as a markdown document. So it's great because you don't only have it available inside Dify, but you can also use it elsewhere. And all you need to do is just to get an account on Firecrawl and then put in the name of your support portal here, for example. Make sure that you put in as many pages as you have on your portal here. I have about 230, so I'm going to put 500, and then you click run, and then it's going to scrape the website and make it available through the knowledge base. Then after some time, a few minutes, you would have this knowledge available here. So I have it here, support portal, and then I have all these 240 pages available. They're split into chunks, and now I can use them in my AI workflows, and I can test how retrieval works. So retrieval is something that you use when you ask a question to the knowledge base. For instance, if I ask something like, what is betweenness centrality? What happens here is that the underlying model creates a vector representation of this query, and then it finds the chunks that are most similar semantically to this query. So you see it found 3 chunks on betweenness centrality, very good, and then it will feed that into my AI chatbot as context in order to have it generate better results. So this is what is referred to as RAG, or retrieval augmented generation. The problem with it is that if you ask a general question like what is it for, it's just going to give you very random results. So this is why InfraNodus is very helpful, because it allows you to add this additional contextual data to your AI workflows and to improve the results that you get from your knowledge base. And I will show you how you can do that in a second. So once you have the knowledge base created and you tested that it works well, then you go into Studio and you can create a new chatbot. So you click on chatbot, create from blank, and here you have an option that you can just make like a standard chatbot, and this is good if you're just a beginner, so you can give it instructions, tell it to use the context that you provided. Here I'm going to use the support portal, and there you have a chatbot and you can already publish it and then embed it on the site or share it via a link. But the problem here is that you're just using the knowledge base. So as I said, if you make a query that is too general, it's not going to give very good results. So I recommend you to use directly the Chatflow workflow that they have. So it's in here for advanced users, Chatflow, and then you create a new Chatflow, and they will give you like a template that you can use to build upon. And here it's a very simple one. It's just a visual programming language where you say, okay, the flow starts with the user query, then you will feed this query to an LLM of your choice. You can choose here which LLM you use, and then the answer will be generated. So if you run it in a very simple way, you know, like if I just click a preview and I say, what is it about? It's just going to ask this question to the LLM. And of course, because the LLM doesn't have any context, it will say, could you provide more context or specify what you're asking? Okay, so that makes sense. Like it doesn't have any context. This is why we need to use the knowledge base. So what we're going to do is to add the knowledge base that we created with InfraNodus. We click on add block here, knowledge retrieval. We add this node here, okay? And then we break this path. And then we will say, in fact, when the user asks a question, you should first send it to the knowledge base. So you just make a connection here. You say that you will be using the system query, so it's the query of the user. Then inside this knowledge base, you say that you want to use this support portal as the knowledge base. And then the chunks that you're going to get that I showed you in the previous section, you feed them into LLM. And then from LLM, you will then have an answer. So then if I run this thing again and I ask it a very general question like what is it about, it will still not provide very good result, but at least it will know that we're talking about InfraNodus, okay? So look, it goes into the knowledge base, it retrieves something, still not precise enough because we're not too precise in the question, okay? But we could actually try to be like InfraNodus. Then let's see what it produces. It goes into, okay, so here it says InfraNodus is a tool that used for text network analysis. It allows the users to visualize any text as a network and see the main topics it covers and how they're connected. So that information it wouldn't be able to have just from the model itself. So that's great because we already have a little bit of context with this knowledge retrieval node. But as you saw in the first instance, it didn't work because I asked a very general question. And users sometimes ask very general questions. And this is why we need to augment this workflow with additional context. And this is where InfraNodus comes in. So what you can do inside InfraNodus is that this same knowledge base that you ingested through Dify that is now available in your Firecrawl, you can actually download it, the empty files that it generated. So here I have I think here I have 503 files. So I download them as markdown files here. And then inside InfraNodus, I can go into apps page, and then I click Analyze Context, and I upload those files into a new context. I say that I want to generate a new one here, make sure I say the content of the files, and now I will have this knowledge base available inside InfraNodus itself. So in the most easy case scenario, I can just extract the insights that InfraNodus got about the structure of this knowledge base and feed them into the prompt of my LLM. So that's like the easiest way to use it. And also I can use the built-in API in order to get this information automatically. So I'm going to show you first like the very easy way to use InfraNodus in that workflow. As you can see, InfraNodus generated the visualization of the knowledge graph for this whole support portal. It shows me what are the main ideas inside. So because it's support portal on InfraNodus, we have graph, discourse, network analysis, all these different topics, text analysis, market discourse, community engagement, and so on. And now I can generate like a summary of this analytics here. You see, I have the main concepts, main topics, topical gap, and so on. So I just copy this summary. I can also click here, copy, and then I go back into my Dify workflow, and now I can augment this prompt with the actual context that I provide. And here I have like a slightly modified version of this workflow that I'm going to show you, which I also make available using a link in the description to this video. So you can just copy this one and use it in your own workflows. And what happens here, it's exactly the same thing as we had before, but here we add an additional node where we receive the question from the user, and instead of sending it directly to the knowledge base, we augment this question with the contextual information that we got from InfraNodus. And this is a very useful trick that you sometimes use to improve user queries, that you don't just send them directly to the knowledge base retrieval auto RAG, but you augment them with contextual information. This is exactly what we do. We have this prompt here that says you will receive a request from the user, but you need to add the context. And I also provide this prompt to you so you can reuse it. And we just paste this information that we got from InfraNodus here. Okay, so it has this additional information about this whole context. And now if you run it and you ask, what is it about? Also a very general question. Look what happens here. It feeds it first to this first LLM. LLM is augmenting this original query with this additional contextual information. Then it makes, actually here I need to change. I have to say that it uses the text which it got from LLM. So let me do it again. I will restart and then ask, what is it about? So it generates a response, then it augments the question, it sends a better question to the InfraNodus retrieval database, and then it generates a response. And here you can actually see what happened. It goes into LLM, it received a very general query, what is it about? And here it modified this user query into, can you specify what aspect of InfraNodus text network analysis tool you're referring to, such as its features for graphs. So it kind of like, even though it rephrases the question, it actually adds much more context to it, you see? And then it feeds that question into the knowledge base. Because of that, we retrieve much better results from the knowledge base. And then the answer that we get is much more detailed and more nuanced. And it even has like a specific link on the support articles that we can then use to generate interesting results. So this is kind of like the second stage. We augmented the user query manually with this additional contextual information. You can also do that automatically because now you have this graph inside InfraNodus itself. So what you can do is to actually add an additional node here. So here I have another workflow. I'm also sharing it. And here what happens is that it says, okay, you will receive a user query. And if you don't have any contextual information, so if the InfraNodus graph variable is empty, you will go into the special tool that is called InfraNodus Enhancer, and you will get this additional information from that tool. You will assign it to the internal variable, then you will augment the prompt. So this is exactly what we did, but instead of copying and pasting, we are using the result that we got from the InfraNodus API, and then we feed it to the knowledge base, improve the retrieval, and then we feed it to the LLM model and then get the answer. So you see all this is happening automatically. And here we have this new node, which is the tool, and I'm going to show you how you can add this tool. You just need to go into the tools field here and then custom tools, create custom tool, and then you will just paste the scheme of this tool into here and save, and then you will be able to use it. So here I already have this tool. It's called InfraNodus Knowledge Graph from Text. I'm using that tool in that studio. So if I go back to that flow and show you here, I just basically added this tool through the custom tools here, custom, and then I chose graph and statements endpoint, because we need the graph information. And then I just provided these default values. The only thing I changed is the name of the graph. So because here I have this graph that is called InfraNodus support, I just added into my name here, okay? And then it means that it can use this graph name to retrieve information about this particular context, then feed it back to the prompt. And then it's going to use this information which it obtained from the augmentator and then generate a better result. So if I ask now, what is it about? A very general question that normally would not work with the standard RAG, right? I ask this question, I send the request. You see it goes into the InfraNodus Enhancer. It takes time when it runs the first time, but then it will be faster because it will have it in the cache. It generates this whole response that you saw here, like this whole analytics panel from the graph. It generates it here. And then it will augment the original prompt with this extra data and then generate a much better result again. And you can actually see how it works here. It sent this request to the InfraNodus Enhancer. InfraNodus provided the output with this additional contextual information that contains the main concepts, the topics, and so on, right? And then it fed it into the LLM. So instead of just asking what is it about, the output is this, look, what is InfraNodus about specifically in terms of discourse analysis, network analysis, and its application in SEO strategy and community algorithms. So it took this original question, what is it about, added much more context to it using this underlying graph information. And then because of that, knowledge retrieval now is much more precise, because if you ask it something like this, what is InfraNodus about, but in relation to all these things. Look, if I go here in retrieval testing, if I ask what is it about, a very general question, I'm just going to get some nonsensical results that don't have anything to do with it, like just nothing really interesting. Here, what is InfraNodus about specifically in terms of discourse analysis, network analysis, and so on, it will suddenly retrieve much more pertinent topics that are talking about the InfraNodus API, how it works, and so on. So the results that I get are much more precise suddenly, and this is why this workflow is so powerful. And then the answer that I'm going to get is also going to be much more precise, because now suddenly I have this additional contextual information here that is much more relevant to the knowledge base, and then I can generate the answer that is much more precise. So this is how you would build this workflow, just augmenting the query of the user with this additional contextual information and therefore providing better results. I also provide a link to the article that describes how this works, and you can also test these chatbots by yourself and see how they're different. One last thing that I want to demonstrate is that you can actually optimize this knowledge base for your workflow. So for instance, if let's say you don't want it to focus on some topics, like here I have some additional stuff on, for example, community engagement, and let's say I don't want to have this topic in my responses, what I can do is I can remove it here. And then I can also remove some other nodes, like for instance, if I think that graph and text is too generic network analysis and I wanted to focus more on the underlying concepts, so I can cut off this top layer of the most evident ideas, maybe also InfraNodus and add, and then reveal the underlying ideas. And then I can use these ideas to augment my prompt. So if I save this like this, I can then go into project notes and click generate from RAG, and then it's going to generate the summary of the graph, but based on these underlying concepts. And if I want them to be permanently available through the tool, so if I don't just copy and paste them like I showed you in the easiest workflow here, but if I want to get them through the tool, in fact, I just need to save all those stop words into here. So I'm going to click this button here, save them into permanent list of stop words, save and reload. And now each time the tool is going to query this context, it's going to focus on the stuff that I'm seeing actually on the graph, right? So it's not going to come up with these main, most important concepts, but rather it's going to focus on more latent ideas like market analysis, data analysis, YouTube analysis, and so on. So it gets much more precise. So you can also optimize your knowledge base, and inside InfraNodus you have this really nice measure that's called topical diversity that shows you how diverse the structure of this discourse is, and you always want to target for optimal, because when it's optimal, it means that the topics are distinct from one another, but they're also very well connected. If you go too far and you delete too many things, it will go into the dispersed mode, which will mean that your topics are not so connected, so the results are going to be a bit dispersed. And if you didn't delete all these nodes, so for instance, if I get them back into the graph, I say, okay, don't delete any words from this graph, and just use like a general setting here. Let us see the structure that it's going to generate. So we also get all these words back into the graph, reload the graph again, and now the structure is going to be medium. So it's not diverse enough because there's too much focus on the concept of graph network analysis. So this you can also use to optimize the knowledge base before you ingest it into your Dify chatbot workflows, and then you can kind of like modify it and make it more optimal so it touches upon a variety of different topics and not just focus on one idea. Then finally, when you're ready with your AI workflow, then you just publish it here. So you just click update, published, and then you can either embed it to the website using this iframe, so it's a bit like embedding a YouTube video, or you can just also share it with the link, run app. In fact, the link is going to be available in your browser. and then you will be able to ask all kinds of questions to it, and you can send it to people to interact with your knowledge base. In fact, we have it on our support portal now, available to all the users as well. So this is how it works. Let me know if you have any questions, and if you have any comments, please leave them in the description to the video below. And for more detail on how this works, please refer to the support article, because I know it may be hard to understand everything through the video, but that video is just to give you a general overview, and then you can follow the actual step-by-step tutorial in the support portal to implement this for your own knowledge base. Thank you.